Skiff and Dory are osprey that held claim to the boathouse nest at the National Audubon Society's Hog Island camp and sanctuary. They returned to their nesting territory only a few weeks ago. Dory had laid 3 eggs, and we were looking forward to those eggs hatching in June. Around 11:35 p.m. on May 10th, however, a great horned owl attacked and killed Dory. It's a female osprey on that nest. She was incubating 3 eggs at the time. We saw Skiff and Dory endure owl attacks on their chicks previously, but seeing an owl attack an adult osprey was unexpected. We know that many of you felt a strong connection to Dory. She was persistent and resilient, as well as a skilled hunter. But what does, her death mean for Skiff and their 3 eggs? What might her death teach us about osprey? To help us discuss that and learn more, I'm joined by Quinn Burkhart, who is this summer's Communications and Outreach Assistant with the National Audubon Society's Seabird Institute. Quinn, thanks for taking the time to speak with us, especially on this eventful day.
Thank you for having me. It is rather unfortunate circumstances to some degree, but it's also a really good time to talk about really the science behind what is going on. And while it is an emotional event, we can take those emotions and really learn something from this and use it really positively going forward. So I'm really happy to be here and to be talking about these birds that have such an influence on us.
Yeah, events like this, they provoke a lot of emotions, and then they also provoke a lot of questions. So one of the questions that I know people were wondering was about, nesting platforms. Osprey commonly nest on human-made structures and platforms, and people were wondering, do nesting platforms make osprey more vulnerable to predation like this? I don't know for sure, but I don't think so, because most osprey throughout much of the United States are making nests and they're rearing their young on human-made structures. In the Chesapeake Bay, for example, they're almost exclusively nesting on human-made structures, and that region currently supports some of the highest densities of osprey anywhere in the world. What do you think about that, nesting platforms, and how that affects their vulnerability to predation?
It's definitely a hard thing to pinpoint. And as far as scientific data behind this, I don't know that there's concrete evidence really one way or the other. But there's actually a lot of evidence that it protects them more than if they were just in the woods or if they were building their own nests elsewhere. Because one, these platforms tend to be high off the ground. They're not low, they're pretty high up. And because, like you said, a lot of them tend to be on human-made platforms or they're in protected areas, they tend to be almost hidden in plain sight. So this nest is a good example of that, where Skiff and Dory live, because it's on a boathouse that's on Audubon's property, and there's our Hog Audubon education center is right across the way. So it's got a lot of human activity. Our camera obviously is on it, so there's a bit of a barrier between any predators and this nest. So to some degree, they're really well hidden in plain sight. They're kind of where other birds don't necessarily want to go. And yeah, a lot of evidence supports the notion that they're even safer on these nests than they would be if they were off somewhere else. So I think to some degree, it is, again, really hard to know, but I think to some degree, it's safer for them to be on these man-made platforms, if you will, than it is for them to try to find a place where they would have to scope, is it safe for them or not?
And let's not forget that now it's Skiff who has 3 eggs
Yes.
in this nest, right? So he
Mm-hmm.
no longer has a partner to help him rear or incubate the eggs, and if they happen to hatch, I think it would be difficult for him to incubate the eggs, but if they happen to hatch, he's going to have a lot of work to do to feed them and protect them. So what or how might Skiff's behavior change that he doesn't have a partner to help in those tasks?
This will be really interesting to see. We've had some conversation with someone over on Hog Island where we actually have another camera over there on a different nest. That nest has not been successful for quite a while now, but it would be really remarkable if Skiff's behavior changed to the point where he essentially switched roles into Dory's instincts, where he was always on the nest and incubating them. He's actually been there, from my perspective, he's been there quite a bit the last couple of days, more than I would have expected. So it seems like something is clicking, maybe, that he's starting to realize that it's just him and he's on the eggs, but it's not bred in his genes to do that. He is bred to go and hunt. He's bred to take his turn watching the eggs, but he's not really supposed to be there all the time. So it'll be really interesting to see if he decides to stay there. We don't know yet. It's very recent. This just happened a few days ago, so it's very early to decide or to predict even what might happen with him. But it would be really stunning to us. That is the exact word that one of our researchers used. It would be really stunning if he decided to stay on those eggs all the time. He really can't even do that because, again, he has to go hunt, and they're very young eggs. They've only been there for a brief period of time, and their incubation period is about 40 days. So they're really young eggs. He would have to be there pretty exclusively all the time. So it would be really remarkable if he did that. But he could. We're not sure yet. But he could stay there. He could leave. We're gonna have to wait and see.
This is certainly a learning opportunity. So amongst the tragedy of the loss of Dory, this is an opportunity for us to learn something about Osprey during an event that we don't often get a chance to witness. I think we should talk about, though, how people are feeling about the death of Dory. Certainly there's the science side of it, and then there's the element of human emotions and all of this. When I see situations like this, I really do try to remind myself that the owl was doing nothing more than surviving in the only way it knows how. Its behavior, if you're going to just boil it down to its essence, is no different than an osprey catching fish. And we talk about this frequently with ospreys and other wildlife, but to paraphrase Dr. Rob Beauregard, he says that nature isn't cruel because it doesn't act with malice. And that means it doesn't act to cause harm for harm's sake. The forces of nature, though, they are indiscriminate. So bad stuff happens even to good organisms and good individuals. So survival from one organism, that means often death for another. And I think finally, remember that we can look at this from a logical perspective, but it is okay to feel angry or sad or to mourn the death of Dory. Situations like this really do remind us of the fragility of life. And sometimes I even use it as a motivator to think about how I can take advantage of my limited time here on Earth to make the world a better place. So Quinn, with that being said, with my thoughts there, what advice do you have for webcam viewers who are saddened by Dory's death?
I certainly agree with you. That's a really excellent quote to start this off. I think it is a really good time to step back and think about what is actually happening on this camera. I think that, this is not edited National Geographic footage. It's a raw footage camera. You're watching nature unfold. And so to some extent, this nest is special because it has this camera on it, but that doesn't mean that nature stops happening. So this is something very natural. It happens all the time. I'm sure it probably happens in plenty of bird nests, probably minute by minute, hour by hour, every day. So I think it's a really good time to remember that this is a natural occurrence. You are watching science and nature take its course, which is a pretty amazing thing. I also think that it's worth pointing out that having people care so much about these birds and learning from them and getting to experience what they're experiencing with them, not literally, of course, but you're getting to watch in real time what's happening to them. That's really the whole point of projects like Project Puffin and the Seabird Institute, is getting people to care, getting people to understand what is happening and want to take action in whatever way that means for them to help us work toward our conservation goals. So even though it's a tragic, horrific event to have to witness, and we feel bad for our bird friends, it's a really positive outcome to have that outpouring of love and this community to lean on each other, but also learn. So it was a really powerful thing for me to be monitoring our cam comments this weekend and seeing that people were interested. They were asking questions. They were wanting to know what comes next. How may the season unfold because of this? That was a really awesome thing to see, because it just shows that the cams are doing their jobs. Essentially, they're getting our audience interested. They're getting us asking questions. So the human emotion behind this is valid. It's kind of the equivalent to some degree of losing your own pet. That's really heartbreaking. It's upsetting. You spend a lot of time watching these birds and learning from them. So it's a heartbreaking thing to have to witness, but there's a lot of positivity that can stem from that too.
Absolutely. And thinking of positivity, moving forward, what can we do to ensure, in your opinion, that osprey and other birds really have the opportunity to thrive?
A lot of this absolutely goes back to taking action in the way that that means to you. A really good way to make sure that birds themselves stay healthy, especially if you live in a place where there might be wildlife on the road, or if you live in a place where there are lots of osprey nests, making sure that you know who to call. So if you were to find an injured bird, don't never try to approach wildlife by your own. Make sure that you are contacting the right people so they can come assist and take care of any injured birds or animals that you may find. But you can also do what you're doing now. If you're tuned into watching this, that's already helping us out. So being mindful of, volunteering, donating your time, making sure that people in your community are aware of these birds and know how they can get involved too. It's a big community effort. It's a lot of citizen science. So, in the way that makes sense to you to taking action always helps, but just being informed, being here, being on the cams, asking questions, showing that you're curious is also what helps our researchers stay motivated to keep doing what they're doing. We have researchers here on base, we have researchers on our seabird islands, and they are so deeply motivated by audience questions and knowing that people care. So show that you care, take action in the way that helps you learn and helps your community learn. Those are some really good ways to take your emotions from an event like this and use them for good.
Well, great advice, Quinn. And thanks for taking the time to talk with us about this. I'm sure that we'll have further updates to share as we learn more.
Absolutely. It'll be a lot of fun. So stay tuned.
And I want to encourage the audience too to remain hopeful. With losses like this, I think we can marvel more for the birds and wildlife that do find success. And if you want to learn more, of course, about ospreys and the work of the Seabird Institute, go to seabirdinstitute.audubon.org. And then also check out our cameras of ospreys and puffins anytime at explore.org/puffins.